Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. Don't forget, the Star Spangled Banner was written here. Francis Scott Key, right down here, Fort McHenry. So happy 4th of July to everybody out there celebrating. Come down to the Heritage Fair, get some beer, we'll listen to some music. And then on Tuesday, join us at Di Pasquale's. I'll be doing the breakfast act on Tuesday in Canton. I'll have to the future scratch offs. I have a nice stack of these left, and then on Thursday I'll take whatever's left over. We'll take it out to Costas and Timonium. We're gonna have a great show out there in the afternoon on Thursday. So this guy won't be thinking about me on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday because he's on vacation next week. He'll be eating Max Pizza. I'll be seeing him, and now Nice is shoving pizza down there. I hope they are into pepperoni the way you guys are. Luke Jones joins us here now. The Orioles are in Texas. Still trying to get hits off of DeGrom, I guess. And the All-Star voting for Ryan O'Hearn's a good story. Obviously, Jackson Holiday as well. And the parents' trip to Dallas. You and I made the kids trip. I remember getting sit at the kids table there about a year and a half ago up on the roof, but watching baseball from down in Dallas. At least they put a roof on it, right? At least it's not like hot as Hades as it used to be.
Yeah, I suppose so. And watching the last two nights, it kind of sums up what the Orioles have been over the last month or so, right? We've talked about it. They've been better than they were. I mean, you can't get much worse than what they were 7-23 from late April through about the third week of May. And they had that stretch where they won 9 of 11. For a minute, you're thinking, okay, is this the start of this team playing way better and making a run and all that? Well, they've gone 12-12 since then, right? They've gone 500 over the last month or so. So that's where I kind of laugh when I hear, whether it's the broadcast or anyone that's just trying to be optimistic because this season was supposed to be fun, right? I mean, even with some of the questions in the offseason, we all thought this was going to be a winning baseball team at the very least. But they've kind of settled into this win one, maybe win two, and then they lose the next two. Win one, lose one, right? You have a big win on Monday night. I mean, they scored 7 runs in the 10th and 11th inning. I mean, that was a heck of an exciting ball game on Monday night. Gunnar Henderson with big hits and Colton Cowser hits a home run. They win. And then you go out the next night and look, on paper, it's Brandon Young against Jacob deGrom, right? I mean, it's about as reverse lock as it gets. And played out that way, basically. They weren't as bad as they were against DeGrom the first time around in Baltimore last week, but
I wish I knew more about betting to say something smart. Like if I could put $1 on Jacob deGrom, did they give me $1.01 back? I mean, if they were like literally, it's DeGrom against the guy, a double-A pitcher. Like what do you at home? What do you expect, right?
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, at least we weren't talking about the Orioles being perfect gamed through 7 innings.
Yeah, you didn't need to watch it to know they were going to lose, right?
But yeah, so I mean, it just speaks to where they are right now. I mean, look, they're 11 games under 500. I mean, they'll have a chance for a series win with Sagano going to the hill. You'd really like to see him put forth a good effort. I mean, we've talked about it with their starting pitching. It's amazing to think where they were the first month of the season. Who were the biggest culprits? Charlie Morton and Dean Kramer. And when you look at where they are the last few weeks, Morton and Kramer have been their most dependable starters, and throw Trevor Rogers in there for a couple starts, right? I mean, it's still a small sample. And in contrast, you have Zach Eflin, who was awful for 3 starts, is now on the IL. And Sagano, over his last 4 starts, just hasn't looked like the same guy. So a month ago, we were at least saying, well, you should have a good chance if you want to move Eflin, if you want to move Sagano. You should have a chance to do that at the trade deadline. Well, Eflin, who knows at this point if he's even movable, if he's even going to be healthy by the trade deadline.
And this franchise has had very few things go right in the last year, right?
I mean, it's been terrible.
It's unbelievable just in trying to deal a couple of pitchers at the trading deadline because everything else has gone wrong. That goes wrong too, including Mountcastle. Just guys that, you might have been able to move at some point, move a bat or whatever. Just all of it's. That's why I said Batista, and you burred up at me. No. It's like moving Cowser. Everybody burrs up at me. Well, you better trade somebody.
Well, no, you don't. See, that's the wrong mindset to have. You don't just trade guys for the sake of doing it.
No, if you're going to trade, you have to give something away. And that's all I'm saying. If you're going to make a trade and improve this team in some way, whatever that means,
but I would
you're going to have productive, healthy players, and they don't have a whole lot of that going on right now.
Well, but the difference there is you're talking about guys that have club control beyond this year, right? I mean, even Ramon Laureano, who I was reminded, I had kind of forgotten this. They have a team option on him for next year. I mean, okay, if someone blows you away and you say, all right, this is the best Ramon Laureano's looked with the bat since his days in Oakland a few years back, maybe we need to take full advantage of this if a team's going to blow us away with an offer.
He's also not an expensive player to keep.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, right? And I mentioned a couple days ago, I brought up Ramon Arias. There's another example of someone that might be a sneaky, useful player for a contender, but at the same time, is he still useful to you next year, right? So there's a lot of that going on, but you just look at this team in its totality, and you just said it. I mean, so much has gone wrong. That's their own fault over the last year, but they've also had a lot go against them in terms of just bad luck and just it really is a Murphy's Law kind of deal for them.
I don't know what's gone right.
Yeah,
I mean, Holiday sort of emerged.
Yeah.
Ryan O'Hearn has been a good player, but like
Laureano was a great signing, right?
Batista's back, but that was bad news that he missed a year and a half.
Sure.
His arm fell off for a year and a half. So I don't know how great I feel about it. So, I mean, just in a general sense of everything that happened from the summer where Bradish was about to win a Cy Young, Gunnar Henderson was coming on, Rutschman was emerging. They had the number one minor league organization anywhere. Whew. Man, as we sit here at the All-Star break, I am just scratching my head at all of it. It really is. It's been an amazing kind of meltdown.
It has been. And like I said, yes, I'll fully acknowledge they've been better over the last month, but what does that look like, Nestor? 12-12 over their last 24 games. I mean, they won 9 of 11. Great. I mean, God bless. They won 9 of 11. You can find most teams in baseball are going to have a stretch like that at some point. Maybe not the Rockies, but most teams, even average to middling to below average teams, will have some stretch where they win 9 of 11 or 8 of 12, something along those lines, where they play representative, good baseball for 2 weeks. And the Orioles did that. But the problem is that needed to be the springboard to them then playing, I don't know, 16-8 over their next 24. And instead it's been 12-12. I mean, they're 11 games under 500 going into this finale, which is exactly what they were on June 5th. Right? I mean, they've treaded water as far as where they stand in relation to being 500 for almost a month now. That's not making anything up. That's making a very easy decision at the trade deadline for Mike Elias. Not in terms of who you trade, but in terms of looking to sell, and certainly not being in a mode where you're a buyer for anything having to do with just
what do they have to sell? That's what I keep saying. That's why I'm not being facetious about Batista or Cowser or any of the players, but like, they don't have much. I mean, they really don't.
Well, but see, we're having a different conversation there. If you're going to look, I'll hear that if you want to sell off Felix Bautista and Colton Cowser, like, okay, then you're just going into a rebuild then again, I guess. Because
depends what you're getting for them.
Well, but again, you still haven't really given me a scenario where, okay, Bautista, he's a reliever. All right, I get it. He's a really good reliever. At a couple years ago, before the injury, he was arguably the best in baseball.
I'm not looking to give anybody away. No, I'm looking to get. But you're looking get pitching is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to get something that looks like a starting pitcher. If I have to play Laureano instead of Cowser, and we're all into Cowser's going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, I'm not.
No one says that.
I'm not anti him. I just don't know because he's healthy and everybody thinks great of him.
No one thinks he's a Hall of Famer. But who's your outfield going to be next year then?
I don't know. Who's your pitching going to be?
Great GM there, right there. I mean, who? I don't know.
We gave Tyler O'Neill $20 million to play right field, so you better think about him.
Well, I'm just saying, if you're
you said Laureano's under contract,
okay,
right?
But I'm just saying, you fixate.
I'm not even trying
Cowser,
to be argumentative. I'm trying to find something they have of value to put in a trade that's not Basayo, because you can't touch him. Can't touch Henderson. Can't touch Rutschman. Rutschman's not worth much. I mean, Holiday, Westberg, we're not touching those guys. You're saying Cowser's untouchable. Great. They're all untouchable.
I've never said that.
How do we get pitchers?
But
what do we give up to get pitchers?
I just think if you're doing that, then you're depleting your core in the process. I mean, I think you're weakening yourself in that, like, to get what? Okay. Like,
You think money's going to get pitching in the offseason?
I think it has to. I think it has to. I think that's the route you have to go. I think you have to dip your toes into the 2 to 3 year, maybe a 4 year deal kind of market that they haven't been willing to do. We're going to see a guy on Wednesday night pitch against them, Nathan Eovaldi, and he's been available at a couple different points. Now, this past winter when he re-signed with Texas, all indications were he wanted to stay there, right? I mean, he won a World Series there. He was their de facto ace. He stepped up in place of DeGrom a couple years ago. But Eovaldi was the kind of pitcher that was available 3 winters ago when I thought, and clearly John Angelos was still owning, the Angelos family was still owning the team at that point. And I'll even acknowledge that as it pertains to Mike Elias and whatever they were doing. But I still think that's where they have to go. I do. Look, Colton Cowser's not untouchable, but I still need to see what that deal looks like because I don't know where it matches up that you're going to necessarily acquire someone that's going to be the kind of pitcher that a team is looking to trade if then they want Colton Cowser, who's already a major leaguer. Like typically when teams trade those kind of pitchers, it's for prospects down the road or something like that. So I just wonder what the fit would be, right?
And what are Orioles deals at this point? What do you think? What do you really think gets dealt here at the end of the month when there's still 8 games under 500 or worse? They're going to Atlanta this weekend. They could be 15 under by the trading deadline because they give up 6, 8, 10 runs every night.
Well, or they could just be 10, 11, 12 games under 500, which is where they've hovered over the last month, right? I mean, that's been my point. But Brian O'Hearn should be traded, right? He's an expiring deal. He's going to be the most likely the all-star DH. We'll find out with the final voting, and then we'll reconvene and talk about that one way or the other.
So you get a relief pitcher from the Phillies for him, or whatever, right? That's what's going to happen.
Relief pit. Again, I don't know what it. First of all, the Phillies need relievers.
No, but last year they gave us all their. I'm just saying the kinds of deals we did last year. What are you going to get?
Well, but they're in a different mode. They're looking for something different than what they were last year. Was buying for the present, and okay, it just so happened that Soto had another year of team control, and Dominguez had a club option that you could exercise.
So you're looking for a double-A starter?
Maybe
you're looking for their next Bradish kind of guy?
Yeah, he's got to be far enough along, right? But, double A, maybe someone that's on the cusp of being promoted to triple A, somewhere in that neighborhood. Like, I don't want a low A guy that's 3 years away, right? It's got to be someone that maybe you would project to factor into midway through next year, right? When you're at a position where inevitably you'll have a couple pitchers hurt and you see.
And I always wonder, does that just project to be Brandon Young or Chase McDermott or Cade Povich?
Sure.
And if you get one of those guys for Ryan O'Hearn that can make 13 starts next year and pitch to a 4.8, I guess.
But this goes back to what we were talking about the other day. Dean Kramer, over the last 4 years, you know what Dean Kramer is? He's a league average starter. Right? He's not a number 1, not a number 2, really not a number 3. But if he's a number 4 or a number 5 starter for you, even for teams that fancy themselves as contenders, he was their number 3, number 4 starter 2 years ago, right? So, but that's what he is, right? It's not anything great. He goes through stretches where everyone wants to replace him, and then he goes through a stretch like what we're seeing right now where he's at a sub-3 ERA for 2 months. But my point with that is if the Orioles, if you could just snap your fingers, if you had a clone of Dean Kramer that filled out the 5 spots in the rotation, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they'd be the best team in baseball or anything like that, but they'd be in way better shape than they're in right now, right? So we can't discredit what that can mean for a team, especially seeing what it looks like around baseball year after year that you need arms. You need multiple arms. You need guys at AAA that are more viable than Brandon Young. Look, Brandon Young kind of is what he is. I just don't think his stuff's good enough, right? I don't think it's a case where this guy, goes out and walks 6 people or does anything that's like completely unprofessional. I just don't think he's good. I just don't think his stuff's good enough. I don't think he's going to be able to get hitters out consistently 2 or 3 times through an order. And maybe he settles into a relief spot at some point in the next year or two. But that's kind of where you are right now because of all the injuries you've had. And even a case like Chase McDermott, who has struggled, right? I'm wondering at some point, and some people have even projected him to be a reliever, right? failed starters become relievers, right? I mean, that's typically the process that we see with young guys. So
Look at Keegan Aiken, right? I
yeah, but
mean,
to go back to answer your question, because you asked me what they have to move. I mean, O'Hearn, Cedric Mullins, you're hoping that Cedric Mullins can get the bat going over the next 3 weeks. We know, I mean, Ced's streaky, right? We've seen this. He was great over the first 5 weeks of the season. He's scuffled since then. I mean, there's no
he's a tool guy you want, though. Great
yeah, no
glove,
no
good
question.
man. Steals bases,
I
can
mean,
get on base. Put him in a pennant race. Maybe, at this point in his career, that could really pop. He might hit 330 in September for you if you put him into a situation where your outfielder's hurt or you have a need. And that speaks to assessing teams like the Cubs and the Padres and teams that think that they're
yeah,
on it and in it and may have some pitcher at AA that could help you. But I
sure.
keep thinking this is not top shelf sales here.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is very, very, if we're looking forward to the trading deadline and we're going to wind up talking about O'Hearn as an all-star before the weekend, I think this is we're making a mountain out of a molehill. We're sitting here spouting all about trade,
Oh,
unless you're going to deal a Rutschman or a Cowser and
sure.
somebody really values them and you get an opening day starter next year because they're an Eflin kind of thing where they have 2 years left on a deal and
Yeah.
the team's not competitive. Again, there's 30 teams in baseball. Many of them have lost a lot of their primary pitching.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys making $40 million you can't deal for. Corbin Burns, just go down the list of all of the guys, Cole, all those guys that they've been given a lot of money. They're not dealable. They're considered ace pitchers who are banged up and hurt. I don't know. I mean, then the next thing is why the Diamondbacks aren't going to want to deal pitching when they don't have their ace either. So everybody, it's like the Orioles 2 years ago. They lose Bradish, they lose Means, they
Yeah.
lose Wells. All of a sudden, they're not dealing Povich or McDermott because they needed them.
Right, right. I almost think, and this is, and obviously I've picked on you a little bit, and we've gone back and forth with the Colton Cowser thing, and we've just used Cowser as an example.
I'm only using him because he has value. All the
I
rest
would,
of these guys, you're getting nothing. O'Hearn, great. You're not going to get much for any of these guys.
but again, I don't know where that deal aligns. If another team wants Colton Cowser, that's probably a pitcher there that would demand him, that would command him, is probably a guy they're not willing to give up. I almost feel if you're going to do a deal like that, that would involve one of their core guys that's, and Cowser's semi-established at this point. I mean, he's second in Rookie of the Year voting last year. He's got an 800 OPS
I
right
would
now.
call it an attractive young
I
major
almost
league player.
I almost think that's the kind of deal that maybe you'd see over the winter, right? I mean, where there's a bigger pool of teams that are looking to move and change up their roster, things like that. But let's because you asked me, O'Hearn. Now I'm not going to say anything about him behind the plate. I think there are plenty of teams that look at Gary Sanchez's bat and look. I think the Orioles, especially if you're willing to pay down $1.5 million of his salary or something like that, you might be able to, move him, and then that can open up, a spot for Basayo to arrive in the third week of August, right? So you have those two. I've mentioned Ramon Arias. He's got a year of control left, but he's someone that could be a sneaky, attractive piece for another team. Same with Laureano in the sense that, again, do you want to sell high on Laureano knowing what his last couple years had been, and is he going to really duplicate this, right? So, and he has a team option attached to him that could be attractive.
And those guys you've mentioned, you're giving me grown-ups and big league players.
Sure.
Different than Mayo and Kerstad and these guys that the Orioles are counting on, including Cowser. They're counting on
Sure.
established guys are different, and more than established, which will be Westberg and Henderson. They become completely untouchable. So again, I think we're dealing from not the top shelf here. We're dealing from the middle to the lower shelf in thinking you're going to find another Suarez to give you innings or find another something that pops, like Ryan O'Hearn's popped, right? I mean, Ryan O'Hearn's something out of nothing.
Sure. No question about it. And I think the blueprint is you kind of look at what the Orioles got for Trey Mancini. And let me be clear. I'm not saying that you're doing cartwheels over what that return was, but how about the Jorge Lopez deal? They got Cade Povich out of that deal, which don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Cade Povich is this established legitimate major league starter, but Jorge Lopez, he's been DFA'd multiple times. Like he's on his way out of baseball at this point in time. And they got Yennier Cano in that deal as well. So I think that's what you're looking at, right? You're looking at something like that where you can get some complementary pieces. You can restock AAA of your farm system, right? And out of the, I don't know, let's say they make 3 deals, right? And maybe a couple of those deals, they have a reliever paired with one of the position players that I just mentioned. Maybe you get 7 guys, and if 2 or 3 of them end up being useful to you over the next couple of years, then I think that's absolutely worth it, right?
Well, there's your Trevor Rogers deal right there.
Sure. So
Trevor Rogers has made 2 good starts in a meaningless year, right? I mean, but he's on the hill, and right now, he's
trending upward.
For now, he's in the rotation next opening day. For now,
you hope so, right? I mean, and more so, not even because of the performance. The stuff looks better, right? They've made some adjustments with him. For as much as we've crushed their their player development in terms of guys getting to AAA and then not being ready to perform at the major league level, or whether we talk about what they've done from a pitching standpoint. I mean, again, I was right there listening to him after his big start that he had on the last homestand. He flat out talked about the adjustments the Orioles made with his mechanics and, keeping his front side a little more closed, and the fact that he was able to get more velocity on his fastball. His stuff was crisper, all of that. So it's not as though, and this is where I've always struggled with, the conversation we've had about Mike Elias and this organization over the last, not year, but let's say the last few months. They're not completely incompetent, despite what unhappy fans, and justifiably unhappy fans, would say right now. But does need to be a recognition of what is going on. What is the disconnect with some of this? I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this in passing. I mean, Jorge Mateo was on a AAA rehab assignment. He hurt his hamstring, and he's going to be out 2 months now. Arm injuries happen everywhere. Okay, I want to be very clear about that. I'm not picking on the Orioles for the state of the health of their pitching right now, because you can do the same with the Dodgers and any number of other teams right now, including very good teams around baseball. But the number of soft tissue injuries that they've had at the major league level and even in the minors with guys like Enrique Bradfield, I want to know, what's going on with your strength and conditioning program, right? I mean, there's something else. There's bad injury luck, and then there's guys constantly hurting their hamstrings and having setbacks and things of that nature, where you're saying, this shouldn't be happening. We're not talking about 36-year-old has-beens that are just their bodies breaking down. This is happening to the 20-somethings on your roster, right? Guys that should be, you would hope, in peak physical condition. And I get it. You're not saying you're never going to have injuries, but I think you need to be, as an organization, self-critical as far as hey, what is going on? Okay, Brian Ebel left in the offseason. I'm not saying that's the end-all be-all for why this is happening, but okay, what is going on with your trainers? What is going on with your strength and conditioning? What are you doing for these guys to make sure they're not pulling muscles and what we're seeing? So, that's just something else to add to the list. And let me be clear. Maybe it is just a truly incredible run of bad luck. Maybe that is the case, but boy, you need to be very introspective in terms of really looking at that critically and saying, is there something that's missing here? Did we change something? Did we omit something? Do we need to add something to our program? Because we shouldn't be having this many, not just hamstring injuries, but guys are missing multiple months. I mean, Mountcastle's going to be back in maybe early August, right? But Westberg missed more than a month.
But be careful with these trades too. I mean, we talk about Trevor Rogers right now. Kyle Stowers he's going to hit 30 home runs and drive in 90 runs. Yeah. He's hitting 283. His OPS is almost 900. I mean, slugging over 5. I mean, they gave him 150 at bats here over 3 years and waltzed him out. And he's a big league player. He's a big league player, and you couldn't get that out of him. That shame on them. Not that they gave him away and he's turned into a big league player and you got a pitcher. Shame on you that he's not in the outfield right now. And you went and signed Laureano and gave all this money to O'Neill. And those are the numbers you wanted for O'Neill: 14 home runs, 283 at the All-Star break.
Yeah, and obviously O'Neill was signed more so with the idea of being a right-handed bat against left-handed pitching. But yeah, but this is also part of the problem of I've said this to you at various times with this organization, even going back 2 or 3 years ago when things really started turning the corner, and you're talking about a team that was then a contender, that it was tough. They had the old guard, right? The Santanders, the Austin Hayes, obviously Mullins is the last one left, but there was a perfect example. They had those three established guys in the outfield, and then you had Kyle Stowers, right? And he was up, and he'd play, when he was on the roster, he'd play 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week.
You also have Mountcastle and O'Hearn
Right.
clogging up first base, the sort of the right field thing that
Yeah.
maybe they could play.
So, and I understand their plight in terms of thinking about this, in terms of you have these good established major league, and I'm just going to stick with the outfield because you mentioned Stowers. You have those guys, and it's like, well, you're contending right now. Do you really want to part with any of these guys right now? But then the problem is that completely created a logjam for Kyle Stowers to never do frankly, what Kobe Mayo is doing right now, even though I still think Kobe Mayo should be playing more than he is. But the idea is there's a runway for him, right? Mountcastle's out until August. Yes, O'Hearn will play some first base as well, and you DH Mayo some, but you're giving him an opportunity to work it out, right? Kyle Stowers looked pretty in over his head for his stints in Baltimore. Colton Cowser was completely in over his head 2 years ago when they called him up in July. Mayo looked awful last August when they called him up. Mayo at this point, I'm not saying he's there yet. He still has a ways to go. But I think anyone who's watching Mayo on a regular basis now, you are seeing better at bats. He's not striking out nearly as much. He's working more counts. The power, I think you're waiting for that to come, but he's looked like he's trending in a good direction. Now,
But
it's
one of the
still,
problems is when Gary Sanchez hits a home run in a meaningless game, Jim Palmer's yelling, "He's got to play tomorrow."
yeah.
Well, where's he going to play?
Well, and
That's going to take at bats away from Mayo, right?
well,
Like literally, at some point they get squeezed out the side door, and then there's the whole righty lefty thing of, "Hey, dude, right-handers pitching, you can't play tonight. We got to
yeah,
have the left-handed lineup." So,
which has been something they've been so rigid with the last few years. I mean, I've said to you, they don't seem to really buy into reverse splits, and I get it. That's statistically noisy year to year. Sometimes you have a right-handed pitcher who is great against lefties one year, and then the next year lefties crush them, and vice versa, right? I mean, you'll have some of that. So from a organizational philosophical standpoint, I get that to a degree, but it feels like at times it's so rigid that it's been detrimental then to developing some of these guys. I mean, Jackson Holiday, he didn't play against lefties really at all last year, and I get it. I mean, he struggled big time. So I think that was their way of trying to protect him. He wasn't playing against lefties earlier this year. Go look at his splits. He's been just as good against lefties as he's been against righties. So I feel like on paper, they have this idea in their mind of like this progression when guys get to the majors. It's like, all right, we call them up, they're going to sit some first, at first, and they're going to kind of, and look, for a few days, fine. Okay. But at the same time, if these are guys that you've been championing these guys and their arrival and how good this farm system is, it's been odd how they've handled some of these prospects when they get to the major leagues. And look, I'm not saying a guy needs to be on scholarship. Like if Kobe Mayo, like everything I just said about him, if he were 3 for his last 40 with 28 strikeouts, that's a different story. But he's handling himself okay, right? I mean, the defense at first base is a work in progress, but I think he's a good athlete. I think he's someone who can make himself into at least an average, solid first baseman. And the at bats have looked better. He's gotten some big hits here and there. He still has a ways to go. I'm not going to sit here and say that his numbers are great, but they've been good enough to want to continue to play him. And then that's where I think you look at the trade deadline. And I use Gary Sanchez as an example. And it's kind of tough to bring it up because look how many catchers they have on the IL. I mean, Hanley's still on the IL. Obviously, Rutschman is on the IL. That's the biggest one by far, but Hanley's on the IL. Chadwick Trump just went on the IL. Jacob Stallings, who they just signed to a minor league deal, they just promoted him. Now, fortunately, he's a guy who actually has extensive major league experience. He was in Pittsburgh for years. But it speaks to, again, going back to the injuries and how they've just been hammered at these spots. But I think part of this trade deadline for me is, yes, tempering expectations and understanding that, yeah, I think you can fill some, a couple needs for the next couple years, some depth for the next couple years. But I think some of that is also clear the deck a little bit, right? I mean, you trade Gary Sanchez, Adley Rutschman will be back. By then, presumably, because it sounds like he'll be back shortly after the All-Star break. You trade Sanchez at the deadline, and again, you might need to throw in $1.5 million or something like that.
So what you're saying is Sanchez is gone, O'Hearn is gone, right? Mullins is gone. Who else is gone? I mean, and then we're going to make the new lineup beginning August 1st for this spring training for next year, literally is all it is. And we're going to have all the baby birds, and we're going to try to have them go 25-17 over the end of the year with lousy pitching, because McDermott's not going to be. You'd like to think Bradish could make some starts, or whoever those guys would be. Yeah. You'd like to see Rogers on time every fifth day, taking the ball and going 8-4 with a 3.9 toward the end of the year to feel good about yourself. Like, I'm trying to paint this as, where do you feel better about this on October 2nd than you do on July 2nd?
Well, I'll go back to what I said from the moment, or actually before they fired Brandon Hyde. I mean, it's getting these young guys trending in the right direction. Like what I'm seeing from Kobe Mayo right now in terms of him looking better, and it's been gradual, right? I'm not sitting here saying that I'm going to guarantee he hits 35 home runs next year. I'm not. But that's something that I'm encouraged by, how Kobe Mayo has played with more extensive playing time. The idea that Kowser's back and healthy, right? And he has a 500 slug right now. They need to get Westberg back, right? I mean, his finger issue is, it's going to, if he doesn't play in the finale, I mean, you're talking about him missing 5 games again. It's like, why didn't you just put him on the IL? That's something else that I kind of wonder about the roster management sometimes. They play shorthanded for days at a time before they put someone on the IL. But, Gunnar Henderson hit the home run on Monday night in extra innings off a lefty, right? I mean, complaints I've heard about Gunnar is he hasn't been good enough against left-handed pitching this year, and he hasn't been great in late and close situations. I would agree with that. That's why that was a big moment for him, right?
They're also not going to take at-bats away from him.
Sure. But my point with that is, are there a few things here and there that I do like what I'm seeing? Sure. Is it enough? No, of course not. But going through the rest of the year, and you asked me who else might be, I'll throw another name out there that, we're going to see, because he's dealing with a little bit of elbow tendonitis that it sounds like he's going to pitch in Atlanta this weekend, but I don't know. Charlie Morton might be someone that you can trade and get something okay for. I'm not talking a top 100 prospect, but go look at his numbers since mid-May. He's pitched really, really well since then. If you're
he'd rather be doing an independent race at his age than with these stiffs.
But my point with that, just like Gary Sanchez, especially if you're willing to throw in a little bit of cash, you might be able to get a decent, not an A prospect, but someone that has some projectable upside, right? I mean, because some team says, hey, you know what? Charlie Morton would look really good as our number 5 starter right now, or because he's done this in the past in his career, he might be a swingman in the bullpen that we love throwing out there in October and just say, Charlie, you're going to throw 30 pitches, throw your curveballs 26 times, which is basically what he did for the Astros way back when.
There'd be nothing like having him come out of the bullpen in game 3 of a playoff game in the 4th inning and feel like he can give you 3 innings, right?
I mean, if he continues to pitch the way he has, but even with him, now it's like, all right, elbow tendonitis. Hopefully this is something very minor. I mean, obviously he's 41. He's going to pitch through whatever minor ailment he has.
Well, I don't need to tell you the value of October innings. I mean, especially if you think you're pitching.
Especially someone who's done it.
You're going to play in October. You're going to play in October. I mean, that's something where the Yankees or the Dodgers would take another guy like him on, no problem, because they'd rather have a guy.
Yeah, and then I think you look at the rest of the bullpen. Okay, we've talked about Batista. It would take a heck of a lot for a team to offer the Orioles for them to part with Batista. And I'm fine with that, right? I mean, you're not talking about someone who's on an expiring deal, so you should be picky. But like Sir Anthony Dominguez, Go look at what his numbers have looked like over the last several weeks. I mean, especially he's added that split to his repertoire. Again, none of these deals, and I've never said this. This isn't about suddenly the Orioles restocking their farm system, that they have the best farm system in baseball again. No, this is about clearing the deck a little bit. You can clear some salary off the books, which is not my motivation, but that's a byproduct of this. And you can see if out of, again, if you make 4 or 5 trades, I don't know, 12 players you get in those 4 or 5 trades, if a handful of those guys
become a Yenny or Cano or become a Cade Povich, sure.
I mean, that's not putting you over the top, but if you're rebounding the way that I think everyone hopes they will next year, right? I mean, I hope we're not talking about this being a multi-year thing again. I mean,
I'd have to see a lot for their pitching to believe in them. I mean, and I'd have to see a lot in the second half here for Henderson to wake up, Rutschman to come to life, Westberg to get healthy, Mayo to blossom. Holiday, I'm not worried about. I'm just not worried about him. I'm not worried about Westberg if he's healthy. I like Westberg a lot. I do wonder where the ceiling is for Cowser. And I'm also wondering with Henderson whether he's a superstar or not, whether he's just a real nice player and hitting left-handed pitching, and also just his glove. Just as an all-around player, I thought he was going to be a 1 and a shortstop for my Stratomatic terms. He's more of a 3, and he's more of a liability at shortstop defensively at this point than he is a definite shortstop. He doesn't look like Machado. Let me put it to you that way. Because I've pissed all over Machado for a long, long time. Machado had a hell of a.
Machado was a third baseman, though, right? I mean, we even had that discussion when he would fill in for J.J. Hardy. There was even debate at that point where it's like, Manny feels like Manny's an okay shortstop, but he's this, dare I say, Brooks Robinson-esque kind of third baseman, and he's not Brooks, but he certainly has.
Machado and Hardy are better fielders than Gunnar Henderson.
Well, and that's fine. And look, let me also be clear. Go look at Gunner's numbers since the beginning of May. He's batting .299 and he has an .850 OPS. Now, is that the MVP guy that he was in the first half of last year? No, but I think I understand what you're saying about Gunner, and I agree to a point, but I think his season isn't as mediocre as maybe you're portraying it to be.
Well, I think he can go a long way in August and September to start to rake in a situation where they get the lineup.
I mean, really,
it's preseason for next year once we hit August 1st. I mean, really, we're at the end of the Orioles season right now, the next 3 weeks, and thinking about it as this year.
Yeah, and really for Gunner, I mean, the key for him, if you're talking about it offensively, if you look at him over the last month, he's swung the bat way better against left-handed pitching than he had been. So that's trending upward. I mean, really the last piece for Gunner at this point, and I hear what you're saying about defense, but the last piece for him is, the home run power hasn't been there as much. So, but he's swung the bat much better. I feel way better about Gunner now.
He's their best player. I'm not pissing on him.
Oh no, and I understand, but I'm just saying, general, because I've shared similar sentiments to what you just said. I feel way better about Gunner over the last 6 weeks than I did 6 weeks ago. Like I feel better now than I did 6 weeks ago as far as how he's playing.
Especially when you see Rutschman fall off the earth.
Yeah, I mean, just availability just not being there, and Rutschman, unfortunately, I mean, June was the best he'd looked in a calendar year. Was on his way to having his best month since last June. And he gets hurt. So
I had Fred Lynn on last week. Go look at his life and his stats and where he was and what he became. At least he had 6 years of what Gunnar Henderson's supposed to be, which is this crazy good player. I'm wondering all of the names we've thrown out. Holiday, Rutschman, had all of the Cowser, Westberg, all of the Mayo, throw him in, all of the superstar guys. Out of all of them, Kyle Stowers is having the best year of all of them from where we thought he was going to be and of this lot of players. And he's doing it in a blimp for nobody down in Miami, and we'll get a chance to see him next week too. But I just think of where all of them are and where the Bobby Witts and where the real elite players are going to be. You better have one of them. I think Henderson's that guy. We thought Rutschman was that guy.
Holiday could be that guy.
You think Mayo could be that guy?
I mean, I don't know about elite, but I think he can be. Put it this way.
He could be Anthony Santander. He can hit 30 home runs.
I think Kobe Mayo could be what Ryan Mountcastle couldn't sustain, right? I mean, go look at what Ryan Mountcastle did in 2021. And I think the perception was, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be a monster for the next 5 years. And really just his power declined. And I know a lot of people wanted to talk about the left field wall at Camden Yards. And do I think that impacted him a little bit? But he didn't hit for power on the road either, right? So I think Mayo can be that plus. Will he though? And this, you just touched on it, and I'm glad you did, because I was having a conversation with another media member during the last homestand, because everyone, the way this season has gone, there's something for everyone, right? You can gravitate to Mike Elias. Brandon Hyde's already gone. You can talk about the coaching staff. You can talk about their too much reliance on analytics. You could talk about the inexperience of the coaching staff collectively. You could talk about the offseason and the pitching. You can talk about the injuries, of course. You can talk about the defense being poor. You can talk about the base running being you can talk about the offense underperforming, even though I would, I made mention how they've played over the last month. Go look at their numbers since about the third week of May. Offensively, they've trended up big time. But the problem is the starting pitching fell off again after they were good for 2 weeks, right? I mean, that's just the way it's been. But there's something for everyone. But the scariest proposition of all these, Nestor, is that maybe the young core isn't as good as we thought. And that is a very sobering possibility. I'm not saying that that's the truth, but that's why
if Rutschman doesn't rebound, you better hope Mayo hits. You better hope Holiday hits. Sure. You better hope that Westberg becomes what I think he can be, or Cowser becomes what all of you think he can be. And I just, I don't know. And that's what August and September become a new season for me, when Mayo's batting 5 at-bats a day, 6 days a week, instead of, hey, put Sanchez out there, put Laureano out there. Dylan Carlson had an at-bat the other night. On Tuesday night, he had a one-pitch at-bat who was on first? Mullen? Somebody fast was on first, and he wound up trying to steal in the next at-bat. I think Holiday was batting, and they were fouling pitches off, and I'm like, and it was a one-run game. I think it was a 3-2 game, and that got away, but it was a one-run game at the time. Yeah. And I'm thinking, you guys are losers, man. I mean, first pitch swinging, you want to take the base. You have a fast guy on. At least make him draw a throw. At least take a pitch. Do something to create action in the game when you're losing down in Texas, and instead you're popping out on a first pitch at bat. The runner stays on first. Now we got an out, and now you're trying to run him with two. Just all of it. Manzolino does not inspire any leadership for me at any of this, and neither does Elias at this point. Elias still looks like the coward running from firing Hyde. He looks like he wants no part of any of this, and the failed trades and the Flaherty signings and the Phillies bullpen deal last year and the Trevor Rogers deal for where they were last year, that's the undoing of Elias for me.
Okay. I mean, do you want him gone after this year?
Yes.
Okay. Just wondering.
I wanted him gone after 3 days of sitting and waiting for him to face up to the fact that he fired the manager, to make the manager the sacrificial lamb in a time when things were bad. He hid. Leaders don't hide. Leaders don't hide.
Him at the time too. I mean,
he's a fraud. He's a fraud. I mean, he's a fraud. I mean, he's not a man of leadership. By the way, Katie Griggs. Oh my God. I mean, we're a year into this and she's hiding. She sat in the dugout last September. She had her Birdland menu, and now nobody can find money bags. Where's Cal Ripken other than making commercials and giving where's the leadership for the organization? Who's in front of this? That Greg Bader? Who's in front of this? Nobody. And for that, they stink. And I think they're going to right now, if you give me $1 and I go up to Hollywood Casino, I'd bet on them stinking. I would not bet on them rebounding and winning 101 games next year. I just wouldn't. I mean, unless Moneybags comes in and has his feelings really hurt and just starts throwing money around the way, kind of, sort of, I don't want to say you want them to, but you're going to go buy pitching. They're going into a different kind, buy real pitching, not buy Kyle Gibson and Charlie Morton and Sagano. Buy pitching the way you think they need to buy, the way everybody else buys pitching, like drunken sailors, like literally, if they need to do that.
I mean, it's not like drunken sailors, because I mean, those are the big deals. You've got to play you've got to get pitching somehow. right? I
No
mean, you don't
doubt.
draft it. In fairness, have they found some Albert Suarez's of the world, like Danny Coulomb, even though, I mean, still maybe the worst decision of the offseason, even though it was so relative, was CNL Perez over Danny Coulomb. First of all, you didn't have to choose one or the other, but I mean, CNL Perez is at AAA now, right? But they have to be more of a player for pitching on the open market. And again, I am not the guy that wants to see them sign 8-year, $250 million deals, right? You don't have to do that, but it's got to be more than 1 year, right? It's got to be more than just band-aids, which is what they've done. I mean, there are always some pitchers that are kind of in that middle class. And guess what? I'm not saying that all of those will work. You might have one that doesn't work out, but
Things work a lot different when you have Corbin Burns in the front
but
of the rotation or
it
Bradish
does.
functioning the way he
It
was
does,
2 years
but
ago.
you need more than that. I mean, they're pitching with okay, you know what? If they signed Corbin Burns, their pitching would still be a disaster, right? Even if he hadn't gotten hurt. Would Corbin Burns have been enough to lift up this rotation? No, he pitches once every 5 days, right? They needed more than that. And part of the problem is they got hurt, right? So you're going to have some of that. The Dodgers are dealing with that, right? I mean, the Dodgers are in a position where they've actually been relying on Clayton Kershaw, like needing him to actually be the old Clayton Kershaw the
They
last.
got Otani back throwing pitching
And look, that's the Dodgers who spend more money than anyone, right? Other than,
and win
I
more
guess
than
the
anyone
Mets.
too. By
Well,
the way,
sure, yeah, but well, they're a well-run organization. It's not just that they spend; they also have a really good farm system too, right? I mean, that's why they're the model for what anyone would like to be, in a perfect world. But yeah, and let me be clear, even if I want to be more optimistic about next year, yeah, the idea that you're going to project them to be 101 wins, no, I mean that's not. I mean, I didn't think they were going to do that last year, right? I mean, going into 2024, I didn't expect them to duplicate 101
you
wins
expected them
again.
to hit the cover off the ball and play defense, and all of these young guys to be
Yeah, I mean,
plus players.
yeah. Well, and look, all of them. That's a tall order, right? I mean, we know there's no such thing as a can't miss prospect, but the group that they have, you need most of them to make it. And that range might be Gunnar Henderson at the top as an MVP candidate, maybe Jackson Holiday as a fringe MVP candidate at a couple points in his career. I don't know. I mean, again, he's 21. Who knows? Uh,
But you
and
can't have Stowers making it in Miami. That's part of the
well,
problem. And Cows are failing here, or Kerstad failing here, or Mayo failing here. That's
I mean,
problematic.
maybe one of those guys can fail, right? I mean, but the other two better make it, right? And that needs to at least be legitimate, valuable, everyday player, right? I mean, I'm not saying I've never said that Colton Cowser is going to be an MVP or anything crazy like that, but I think he's a valuable player. I think his profile, for one, I think Colton Cowser, there's a pretty decent chance he's going to be their starting center fielder next year, and I think he can, if he is playing that every day. Now, the health piece, he has to stay healthy. He can't go diving into a first base bag and break his thumb again. But I think he has the ability that he can play. Okay, I think he can be solid there. Because I would also say Cedric Mullins isn't the defender that he was 4 years ago, right? I mean, he's still good, but is he that elite Gold Glove caliber center fielder? No. I mean, he's gotten older, and I think even some of the range metrics would suggest
So
that.
let's go line up next year. Seriously, now Rutschman's going to catch, Mayo's going to play first, Holiday's going to play second, Gunner's going to play short, Westberg's going
Westberg
to
at
play
third,
third, Cowser's going to play center,
maybe.
O'Neill's going to play right because
Yeah.
they get him a lot of money, right?
Left field, maybe Laureano. I think, do you go out and get another outfielder that kind of fits somewhere in, okay, Laureano and O'Neill? And again, they might trade Laureano. I mean, or maybe O'Neill, maybe the idea is he's not an outfielder anymore. We're going to DH him because we think that might be the best way to keep him healthy and maybe the best way to
Get 30 home runs out of him.
hit 30 home runs, right? And don't get me wrong, that's not ideal for someone that's making the money that he's making, but it's better than him not being on the field at all, right?
Well, you won't have O'Hearn around anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe you try to re-sign O'Hearn in the offseason. I don't know. I mean, there's also that possibility, right? But put it this way, there's probably a bat or two that needs to be added. Now, that doesn't mean that it's $100 million contract guys. I mean, we saw with Laureano that for all their moves that we have killed this offseason, Laureano was a brilliant signing, right? I mean, the way he's played. I mean, he's been one of their 2 or 3 best players this year. I mean, that's how good he's been. And that was, what, $4 million with a team option. That's why. I
And
mean,
I've shown this many times. His output has been better than Cowser's, which is why I look at the Cowser thing and I say, you replace that for $4 million and you got a mediocre outfielder. You got a 250 hitting guy that strikes out a lot, it's going to hit 20 home runs or whatever. That, to me, that's dime a dozen, and that's not something I'm paying $20 million for in the case of Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But so, there's a lot that's going to happen here over the next couple months. And it's not necessarily even, my fascination isn't necessarily with what the win-loss record is. But that said, and I think I said this to you when we were talking with Alan McCallum last week, as we were doing our state of the franchise, if you get these young guys playing better, I think you'll see the results in the win-loss column show up a little bit more anyway, even acknowledging they're going to make some trades here, right? I mean, are they going to trade every single guy that we're talking about? Generally speaking, it doesn't work out that way, right? Typically, you talk about 10 different guys you might trade, and maybe they trade 5 of them, right? And again, I just throw out an arbitrary number there. So we're going to see how it plays out. But yeah, the rest of this year is about getting those guys. And, we'd be totally remiss because you asked me about next year. You're hoping Samuel Basayo is going to fit into that, and that might be that he's the DH when Rutschman catches and vice versa. Maybe he plays a little bit of first base. He's certainly, that they're really working on him to develop him as a catcher. I think the bat is very close to being like, dude, there's nothing else you can do at AAA, but they're really trying to develop him as a catcher as much as they can. I'm okay with that for now, but I certainly would like to see him over the last, 6 weeks of the season to kind of take his lumps, so to speak, and get acclimated and hope that he can hit the ground running next year.
He better hit better than 227, which is where Rutschman is right now.
Sure. Well, and I will say this, the power upside, I mean, we got to see it at the major league level, but everyone who sees him at AAA, they love the bat. I mean, they absolutely love the bat. The question is a little more, he's got a good arm as a catcher. They're tools, but the question is, okay, is he going to continue to develop as a catcher, or does he kind of become a DH first baseman? Again, I saw, a minor leagues. This wasn't an Orioles person. It was just a minor leagues, Baseball America, whatever it was. I saw someone say that this guy has a chance to maybe be the Orioles version of Yordan Alvarez eventually, which, my goodness, if you're talking about that kind of bat, I mean, you'll take that, whether he ends up being a DH or a catcher or whatever. But so we're going to see how it plays out. I mean, there's still plenty of interest in terms of the big picture and what's going to happen on that front. But on a night by night basis, yeah, I mean, again, they've been treading water at 500 over for the better part of a month now. And, in terms of when they first had their little run where it looked like, okay, maybe they're playing better. They've settled into being a middling team since then. So that's not going to do anything in terms of wins and losses in the wild card standings, but you're hoping that some of these young guys, continue to hopefully trend in a positive direction. And, in the case of Westberg, stay on the field, right? In the case of Cowser, stay on the field. In the case of Mayo, continue to look more and more comfortable, look like you belong, look like, start hitting a few more out of the ballpark. If you get those things to happen over these last couple months, there's at least some semblance of a silver lining for what's been a miserable season going into the offseason in 2026.
Luke and I'll be back after before he goes blows away to Wildwood to eat pizza and lay on the beach with his family. Happy 4th of July to everybody out there. I'm going to be over at the Heritage Fair this weekend. We got great stuff at Baltimore Positive. Put a bunch of stuff up. I put a tribute to Rob Roblin up, who we lost this week, who I was trying to get on the show at various points because I loved Rob. So my thoughts to everybody out there celebrating his life and mourning his passing. It's been a strange little 4th of July around here, especially with all the thunderstorms and all that going on. So hopefully we get some good weather. Hope we get some beach time. It is summertime around here. I'm going to be back after it on next Tuesday. We're going to be at Di Pasquale's in the morning in Canton, giving away the Back to the Future scratch-offs. And then on the 10th, we're going to go Back to the Future at Costas and Timonium at the racetrack. And we'll be there on Thursday afternoon. Johnny O is going to be joining us that day. Also, Steve Rouse, former WQSR morning show host, who's, I'll let him host the show. I'm a better guest than a host anyway. So I'll get Steve Rouse out next week So big week. Dan Rodricks is coming on Tuesday. Joe Giordano, Pete Caringi's coming. We're going to talk some soccer on Tuesday at Highlandtown Soccer. Probably going to eat some sausage with peppers before breakfast, which I like a lot. If Rodricks has his way, it's going to be like eggs and peppers and onions or something. I don't know. We're going to eat a lot of food, which is perfect after the 4th of July holiday. Luke is watching baseball. I'm watching baseball. The Orioles are taking on the Braves this weekend. You can find out more about all that we do at Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.